Welcome back. It is exactly 9:34 a.m. News and views on Salam Media. We now cross over to the UK, Scotland in particular, and we're joined by British-based journalist Yvonne Ridley, who is a dear friend of Salam Media. Always a pleasure having her on the show. And let me just start with an opening statement from the article that she has written and hand over to Yvonne to talk to us about her very strong feelings. And I think the feelings expressed in this article and by way of this conversation is something I hold very dear to my heart as well. And I think lots of people will identify with similar feelings regarding the genocide in Palestine and the paralysis of Arab and Muslim neighbors of the Palestinian people. So let me just start with by saying, and I quote Yvonne Ridley from her article, of course, when I first began to study Islam, I was overwhelmed by stories of honorable men and women from the Arabian Peninsula who surrounded and followed our beloved Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like many aspiring converts, I made the mistake of believing that this honorable gene or characteristic was passed down through the generation of families living in the Middle East. But of course, as she journeyed around the region, she says she has slowly began to realize the truth. Assalamu alaikum to you, Yvonne. Welcome to the program. Lovely to have you here.
Walaikum salam, Julie, and it's brilliant to be here. I wish it was under happier circumstances, but here we are today, more than 300 days into the genocide of Gaza. And like many people around the world, I feel totally helpless and bereft. And, I write a column for Middle East Monitor once a week. And obviously the focus is on the Middle East. And there's only one place that I'm looking at the moment I can't move away from, and it's Gaza. And finding something new to write each week without being too depressing is extraordinarily difficult. And last week, I just saw this picture of Mahmoud Abbas sitting next to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And I just thought, my goodness, where are the Saladin Ayyubis, the Khalid bin Walids, Suleiman al-Hakams? And then I resurrected the name of Omar al-Mukhtar, the real lion of the desert in that region, and Amir Abdul Qadir from Algeria, who was regarded as a king among men. And then I looked at these two, MBS, the Crown Prince, and Mahmoud Abbas. And I was just, who are they? Who do they represent? And I just think that they've become so ruthless. They've forgotten that they're Arabs. They've forgotten their great legacy, their great inheritance. They've forgotten who they are, who they represent. And they have become so poisoned by what was described as the West toxification, that they're not representing our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And yet they sat there in their grand surroundings and started coming out with words that, they were with the Palestinian people, they were going to demand this, they were going to demand that, and they were all weasel words. And, they met to discuss the ceasefire. Well, the ceasefire should have been discussed last October. You know, I've called these two treacherous. You know, that they are having their strings pulled by Tel Aviv and Washington. And I know it's difficult. I know it's fine for me to sit in the safety of the Scottish borders and criticise. But I do wish the Arab population who are with the Palestinian people would somehow find the courage to rise up and and challenge the narrative coming out of bin Salman. I mean, he sat there and said, you know, Saudi's commitment to engaging with international and regional parties to help de-escalate the situation is there. I mean, nobody believes this hogwash without an ounce of shame. He pledged his support for the Palestinian people in their pursuit of legitimate rights. And I just thought, nobody believes you anymore. And I wish his closest advisors, instead of kissing his feet, would slap his face. Of course, I know it's easy for me to sit here and say that than for anything to happen. But he would rather rub shoulders with the leaders in Tel Aviv. And that is the truth. And Mahmoud Abbas, his intelligence unit last week in Jenin shot and arrested a resistance fighter and handed him over to the Israelis. And
So, yeah, sadly, Yvonne, it's really about you watch my back and I'll watch yours. There's so many questions around this article of yours. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And in all the time that we've been covering this issue, not only since the 7th of October, I think you visited us here in South Africa and you do know what we're all about here at Salam Media regarding humanitarian journalism. So, what I'm putting forth is the issue around um, talks that if other Arab or Muslim states get involved and support Palestine, there's going to be a flare up in the Middle East. There would be a regional war in the Middle East, and possibly then start escalating to other parts of the world. That is the excuse we have been given, or that is the narrative that has been put out there. Do you buy into that, given what's happened that many years ago in Iraq, which was almost decimated to the ground, then Afghanistan, and now we're seeing Palestine? We also now have heard about Israel bombing Lebanon, or supposedly where Hezbollah is stationed. So, taking all of that into account, can we safely say that perhaps diplomacy should be the route to go?
diplomacy from where? Um, you know, Egypt is sitting there and is equally treacherous as the Saudis, as are, you know, the United Arab Emirates. Let's not forget their role in, or their lack of action. These people have it within their gift to really turn the thumbscrews on the West, and they won't. And I really can't understand why, especially when last year Benjamin Netanyahu held up a map in the United Nations, and it was a map of the Greater Israel, which took in a huge chunk of Saudi Arabia and another huge chunk of Egypt. And I'm thinking, why is Sisi and MBS putting up with this? Because they're coming for you next.
Absolutely.
It's just incredible. And
I think, Yvonne, the question to ask here is, at what cost, at what price? We've heard that MBS has been in talks in the past with the Americans uh, to protect and support him should his father die, that he continues reigning over Saudi Arabia. So it's really all about protecting their own interest, is it not? Sadly so.
Well, it is. And again, we keep hearing that there will be an uprising in Saudi. I'm told that there are a lot of influential Saudis who now can't bear to live in the country and are living overseas. You know, he cannot go on the way he is going on, and in full view of a watching world. He could stop this now. He could be a hero overnight because he has it within his gift, but he's like a puppet. And of course, the strings are being pulled in Tel Aviv. You know, I'm just so angry, Julie. I just want to say to him, fear Allah and no one else. You know, there was a sign of him actually standing up to the Americans when he fist bumped Joe Biden on the red carpet in Jeddah a few years back and refused his two requests. And MBS has it within his gift to become a legendary Arab leader. Instead, he is nothing more than a grave digger for Bibi the Butcher, Benjamin Netanyahu. That's all he is. He's a grave digger.
Let's look at the Iranian situation and the Iranians who had vowed to really retaliate against the killing of Abu Haniyeh. So nothing's happened thus far. There's just been a display of firecrackers, which we could, which we see New Year's Eve all around the world. What do you make of that? And also the Yemenis. I mean, they're a tiny band of activists, and yet they are so fearless. They truly are to be admired. So, what on earth is going on with these leaders in the Middle East? Are we expecting something bigger? Do you think that Iran is biding its time?
Well, I'm surprised that the Iranians have not yet responded to the murder of Ismail Haniyeh, which to me showed the world that Israel has absolutely no intention of sitting down at the peace table. Why on earth would you kill a man who should have diplomatic immunity, a man who was they knew was key to the peacemaking process? Why would you invade another country's sovereignty? I mean, could you imagine if they did that in Britain or Washington or even Johannesburg and killed a diplomatic emissary like Ismail Haniyeh? I'm not going to say I'm disappointed with the lack of response from Iran because it should be full of rage, it should be damaging, and it should be equal to the atrocity that the Israelis committed, and which would obviously mean more blood being spilled in the Middle East. So I don't want to see more blood. I want to see diplomatic solutions. The West is a waste of space. The only reason that Israel's feet are being put to the fire is because of the heroic actions of the South Africans who went to the International Criminal Court. God knows where we would be today if South Africa hadn't done that. And this is what we want to see, uh, more leaders showing backbone and mettle, and not like Abbas and MBS sitting there. I mean, Yasser Arafat must be spinning in his grave now. You know, what a revolutionary leader he was. But we've got these two sitting there, and it as a Muslim, it just makes me feel so angry and helpless. And as I say, if it wasn't, you know, we can never underestimate what South Africans did and the bravery that it took to stand against the international community. And there are the Yemenis, bless them. The Houthi rebels, I'll probably get locked up for saying this, but you know, they've got nothing. The country is being bombed to hell, and it's now being hit with floods and all sorts of hardships. And yet there are the Yemenis every Friday without fail. More than 1 million take to the streets of Sana'a, and they are there to show their solidarity with their brothers in Islam. And they are
Absolutely.
standing up to the largest army in the world quite fearlessly. You know, I'm talking about the Americans. And they continue to get missiles thrown at them from Israel and America. And I'm just, you know, the Yemenis. I don't want to encourage a mass war in the Arab world. That's the last thing I want to see. You know, there's been enough bloodshed already. But my goodness, what I would like to see are more courageous figures like the Houthis standing up and being quite fearless as they stand shoulder to shoulder with the Palestinians. The rest of the Arab world, you know, don't they see that the Nakba too is coming their way? Unless they get on their knees to this aggressive, lawless, rogue state, it's going to
Uh,
get
your
worse.
thoughts, Yvonne, being a British woman living in Britain, um, being exposed in a very big way to world and particularly British politics. How do you see all of this playing out? Do you think that this genocide is going to continue for a long while to come? Or do you think it's now reaching its end? I mean, there's just so much of havoc and carnage and genocide one nation can perpetrate on another. When is the Western world going to wake up and say, enough is enough? We can't see this any longer. Then also your thoughts, which you must have picked up on the story, is the supposed temporary ceasefire on Gaza for the World Health Organization to immunize the Gazan children against polio. I find that such a contradiction. It is absolutely laughable that they call for a ceasefire on this immunization program where they absolutely refuse much needed fuel, food, medical help. There's been all of that aid that is stuck at the borders, rotting perhaps, and not allowed to reach the people that are so desperately in need. And as you and I speak now, Yvonne, I have no doubt in my mind that the children of Gaza and Palestine are nearing malnutrition or already at the point of severe malnutrition. Two questions I'll leave with you to respond.
Well, if famine was infectious, those children would have food on the table by now. Polio, which was eradicated in Palestine in the last century, has now surfaced. We knew that 2 months ago. And it's quite obvious, call me a cynic, but it's quite obvious to me that Israel is fearful for its own children.
Ah,
Seen the way that they've reacted to the deaths of 6 hostages, and it is heartbreaking. As a former hostage, I can say that it really is heartbreaking for the relatives. But their anger, and they're angry with Hamas. They have no time for Hamas, but they are even more angry now with Benjamin Netanyahu. And they say that following the deaths of the 6 hostages, Netanyahu has blood on his hands. As yet, we can't believe the first story that comes out of Israel that these 6 hostages have been brutally murdered, is what the IDF said. The first words ever coming out of the IDF are usually lies, so we can't believe that. And common sense would tell us that it is not in Hamas's interests to have dead hostages. They are worth much more alive. So the Israeli people who are out on the streets in their hundreds of thousands might actually be right. Netanyahu does have blood on his hands. And if he didn't order that the hostages be killed just to get their bodies back, it's quite obvious to me that because of his refusal to call a ceasefire, he does have blood on his hands, the blood of the hostages as well as the Palestinians. Now, the Israelis couldn't give a flying fig about the Palestinians. Why? Because their media is not reporting on the ground in the way that we are getting reports. I don't think the Israeli people have any idea of the brutality of the occupation in Gaza. They're not interested. They have a very narrow margin, which is self-interest. Fair enough. They've taken to the streets in hundreds of thousands, and they alone will bring down Netanyahu. And what our own leaders in the West are thinking and doing at the moment is beyond comprehension, because you and I and all of your listeners can just pick up our smartphones to watch the genocide unfolding on our screens. These world leaders can, but they refuse to stand up and say black is black, white is white, this is genocide. They just refuse to do that. And instead, they're sitting down with Netanyahu, who is a butcher and should be in a war crimes court. They're prepared to do that. Now, I wonder what they're seeing when they're seeing hundreds of thousands of Israelis, Jewish people, rising up and saying Netanyahu must go. Are they going to continue and support Netanyahu, or are they going to ignore the Israeli people? This has reached an unprecedented situation. And as a British person, I am deeply ashamed at the lack of activity from my own government. If I had somewhere else to go, I would tear up my passport now, because it is to me worthless. It's a means of getting me from A to B. It's not something that I'm proud to get out of my handbag when I go traveling in the Middle East. It's a source of embarrassment.
okay. We need to wrap up now. Maya, I see your posts, and Maya is saying those world leaders are cowards. We couldn't agree more with you, Maya. In wrapping up, then, Yvonne, I do hope that all of those Middle East leaders that you're so disgusted at for their, I guess, paralysis regarding the situation, hasn't disillusioned you as a Muslim, and you do realize that Islam, alhamdulillah, is a beautiful, pure wonderful religion. It's some of the followers of Islam that are crooked, corrupt, and imbeciles. So, to you, my dear
You know,
sister in faith, there are
as
many
a
like-minded. There are very many like-minded people like you and I in the Muslim world. Alhamdulillah.
as a convert, I am inspired by the people of Palestine. Every one of them on the street is a Khalid bin Walid in my eyes, and their unbreakable faith makes them stronger by the day. And that is my inspiration, not some crown prince sitting on a fake golden throne with his minions around him. It's the
Absolutely.
people of Palestine who inspire me. The mothers who pray to Allah when they're holding the bodies of their
Oh,
dead children in their arms. You know,
Dr.
they
Yvonne Ridley,
inspire
that
me.
Alhamdulillah, it was wonderful talking with you as always. You go well. Can't wait till I hook up with you again the next time. Keep us in your du'as, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam from the heart.
It is exactly 10 o'clock. We are way over time and we still have to listen to our Fired Up series with Hafiz Imran Chunara. He's going to be talking about look by design and not by default. And then, of course, Mohammed Arai is on standby. So look forward to talking with him. He's going to be talking to us as well. So please do stay with us.